Welcome to Inside VirtX Live. Today is our first episode, and we're very excited. We're taking you behind the scenes of our animation and into our lives, and just to tell you a little bit more about us, what we do, how we do it, give you insights on how to build a project from ground up, our motivation, our passion, and it's really our hope that we can inspire you to be the creator that you were actually designed to be. And it's our hope also that through our show, we're able to give you a roadmap to start your own business, to launch it, and to scale it. Do you see? So that's why we are here. So let's delve right in, would you? Welcome, Nana. I think a lot of people want to get to know you. The first question I'll ask is, what is it that you would actually say that you do? What do you do? And what is the driver of that thing? What motivates you? What do you do? And what's the motivation to what you do? I think that's my question.
Okay, okay, that's a loaded question. I see myself as a creator, and someone who likes to solve challenges. I like to make technical challenges simpler than they are. So that's what I do. So I'm in started in software engineering, or I've worked in software engineering in video games for years. But I also have this side of me that loves storytelling, and grew up making up stories and telling secondary school, high school classmates, and they'll go off looking for these films. Myself and one of my young friends, Ike, and he was a consultant on Stage Right, and we'll just sit and make up stories and and things like that. So I enjoy that part, but also I enjoy the technical challenge of seeing something that looks like an insurmountable problem and breaking it down into small tasks. So that's what I do, I guess. I create and I solve problems. Well, I solve
Wow.
challenges. I enjoy solving technical challenges.
Hearing you say that honestly is a bit. I mean, I've known you for some time, but just hearing you put it that way, gave me a little bit of chills because that exactly is what we set out to do when we were starting Vertex. Now, I don't know if that was intentional, but that's exactly what we set out to do. We were gonna look for stories and studios that had stories and solve their problems. That's
Yes,
exactly,
yes,
yeah. That's
yeah,
what we set out to do. We were looking for
yeah.
studios all over the place. We called them in for interviews, and we just really wanted to solve their problems. We're like, what are your challenges? In fact, we send them forms and we say, fill up. Let's know what your challenges are on the financial level, on the creative level, on the this level. And just hearing you say
Mhm.
that's actually your heartbeat. That's crazy. Yeah. Okay. So animation. You start out in games dev. The first thought is you grew up where? You grew up in Nigeria, at least did your high
Yeah.
school and your first tertiary here. Um, why how games dev was not a thing? Why? How did you dabble into games dev? Or did you dabble into it, or where did that come from?
Um, yes. So I was born in Nigeria. I was born in Enugu, and I lived in Enugu. I lived in Ibadan, and then moved to the capital in Abuja, and I studied in the middle, what was it called, middle belt. Or I studied in Niger State in Suleja and Mina, and then I went north to Yobe for youth service this thing ago. But that's sort of my background in Nigeria. But when I discovered games, or when one of the events, the core events that happened was in high school. We had this physics teacher. It was really engaging, and he started talking about, and I used to play a lot of games back then. So as a precursor to this story, I love playing games. Of course, played all the driving games, played Tekken and Metal Gear Solid and all that. So that was the fun pastime. And then what listening to this physics lesson, something dropped at this physics lesson where he was talking about how roads are banked. How roads are built so that if there's a sharp curve, they are sort of banked and tilted. So when you're taking the curve, you don't skid off. So the road has to be tilted in that way, and there's a formula to how much you should bank the roads, um, uh, uh, depending on the turn. And I just thought it was like, oh, this is how these racing games probably do. They just use this formula and they plug it in, and then you can drive. And so it just seemed like something clicked that all this can be automated, and it's something that I could probably do. So that was the start of the journey. Of course, it was a long time before I ever got into games, but I remember
Wow.
um, going going during youth service in Yobe. I was applying to schools in the UK, in Canada, for games on my own, like not really um, telling anyone or my parents or anything. And then, when it started to get serious, I remember going to my parents, going, I want to go study games and this. And remember, this is Nigeria, Africa as well, and this is like back then in 2006, 7, where
Yeah.
a lot of parents just want you to be lawyers or
Lawyers
doctors or
and
something,
doctors and engineers and
and
something. I mean,
engineers. Yeah. So I mean, massive kudos to my parents. They, like, I was expecting, the typical African parent, like, what are you thinking? What's your problem? Or that sort of, not, but that sort of resistance. But they were very supportive, and so I was able to, go to Dundee in Scotland to study at one of the best universities for games, Alberta University. So that's how I got into games anyway. Long story. So I really, really supportive parents and
okay, so just
supportive.
quick, yeah, just a quick question to back that up. So when you were in secondary school, because they like asking us this question in Nigeria, I don't know if it's a common question in the world. They say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" What did you say
In primary school, I yes, I
in
said
secondary school?
architect. Yes, I think it
Ah,
was the same. I wanted to, just I wanted to be an architect. Because
wow.
yeah, I thought so, but like like, knowing what I know now, I don't even have any of the skills required for that kind of thing. So that would have been a great disservice
Yeah,
to humanity.
fantastic. I want to ask you something that's very critical. One of the things that we saw whilst we were starting, off right after we set up Vertex was we went on asking studios to send us their work, as incomplete as it was, and we wanted to find out what the challenges were. And one of the major things that we saw was that a lot of animators were stuck, especially with finances. We saw some of them with the most humongous and ridiculous, you know, monies ever. And yes, we know that making animation, especially 3D, is very, very expensive. But it seemed like a task that would never get done. When you look at the person who has this dream, some of their stories were really brilliant, but the financing was just over the top. What would you say to animators who are stuck in ideation phase or in the place where they want to launch and scale, but they're finding some sort of difficulty, financial difficulty particularly? How are they able to overcome this?
Hmm. I mean, it is like realistically tough and difficult. We went through this journey, trying to simplify it as much as possible. And even with that, it was like just incredibly tough to get through. But it's not impossible. So what I'll say to any animator and anyone who's facing that sort of challenge is that there's always one step that you can take, one extra step. I think that's the easiest way to think of it. Like there's always something you can do, even if it's writing an email to somebody saying, I want to make this and I need this, or I need your time, I need you to create this for me, or I need you to do this. Like there's always one step you can take. Um, and what we did in for Stay Dry was to essentially forego everything except one thing. And I think that's what I mean by we simplified it really, really well. We just wanted to focus on, let's do one thing and let's do it well. And we wanted to tell a story that was fun, and that was, action packed. And we wanted to bring six characters, in there with some rich backstories, or with, some personalities, and really different outlooks, and things like that. So that's what I'll say. Just focus on doing
Mhm.
one thing and doing it really well. Everything else, can be, yeah, but especially if it's your first one. If it's your first one, you have to simplify. You really have to simplify and break things down. So that's what I'll say.
Okay, so I want to help this creator. There's an animator there without funds, zero funds. If you had to be that person with zero funds and with this great project in mind, what is the thing you do in practical steps?
In practical steps. Okay, so the person is an animator. So they have an edge. They can already animate. If they were a writer, there's a big hurdle there. But okay, so they can already animate. They have zero budget. Now I've discovered there's two things I'll say. You always, for anything worthwhile doing, you always
Mm,
need people. Even if it's one other person, even if it's someone giving you half their time in a day or something. You always need
mm,
people, because when when you're working on something, it's easy for you to feel isolated, and unless you have some really great resilience, but it's people that, you
so
see
you're
someone has done something. Yeah, it's people that push you forward. So you really need people. So what I'll say, the first thing I'll do is to find someone who aligns with that thing you're trying to do. Someone who says, I think this is a great idea. Yeah, let's do it. And you find a way to make it so that it's worthwhile. There's something about it, like, this is, everyone wants to be part of something big. Everyone wants to be part of something that's, meaningful. Actually, it doesn't have to be big, it just has to be meaningful. So you have to make
mm,
it worthwhile. Um, the other thing I'll say is that sometimes the skill is the least of the problem. Like, we have highly skilled artists,
mm,
animators in
mm,
Nigeria. I mean, brilliant, incredible, amazing, just
mm,
so skilled. Like, you wouldn't
mm,
believe the things that,
mm,
people are creating. So this skill is even the least of the problem. We can have these skills. What's the bigger thing, or what I think it will be missing most times, is the I'll say I guess the leadership. That's the skill, the leadership
mm,
to bring something to life. So
mm,
I think that would be the biggest skill to develop. Like, rather than trying to learn more animation skills, I think
mm,
it'll be the biggest thing to do is to learn how can you find the people that, align with what you want to do. How can you find
mm,
those people? How can you connect with them? How can you build? So in terms
mm,
of skill building, I'm
mm,
saying the same thing, but in two different ways. You need people to sort of help you, to give you that energy and passion as you drive something. And then the second aspect of the same coin is that, being able to build something big, you need to be able to lead people, that actually want to go the same way. And you have to be able to just go, okay, you know what, come with me, guys. Let's make this thing happen. Yeah.
mm. This is so rich. This is really, really rich. Thank you for that answer. So we have Finamon who's left like a question and a comment. We'll take it. We'll answer your question, saying that you don't know how to go about editing your videos. And But Nana, what you said about the first thing you do is find someone who can align with your vision, and what you don't necessarily need to build more skills in as a talent, but now you need to begin to think as an entity. You need to begin to think as a business owner, and that would require core leadership skills, so that you can drive this vision. This is very phenomenal because I think that's exactly what we did. So we came together, set up the company, and we began to look for people within our circle. And for me, that was our first team. I think it's people's understanding of what a team is, that you think that a team is people who you have hired to pay, but that's not really your team. For me, I would think that your first team are the people your who I would call like your vision bearers and drivers in the initial stage, that really understand your vision and will come together with their different talents, no matter how would I say in disarray that talent is. So they might not be animators. In fact, those were not the first people who consulted. Listen, the people who brought the thing to life were the last people that we worked with. The animators, the marketing team, all this, they were the last people that we worked with. We went with the strategists, we went with biz dev guys, we went with consultants, we went with writing story consultants. We had meetings back to back for a year plus, put the story together, and then we now started the hiring phase to get the people who would now execute the job. So that's really, really good. Now it will lead me to hiring.